Right, this is a tune that I wrote about a year or so ago, and it's in memory of a friend of mine from Newcastle, a fellow called Bruce Arthur. And Bruce was a percussion player and great character. He was the least grown-up I have ever met in my entire life. And he had a very long-suffering wife who allowed him to knock all the downstairs rooms in their house into one big percussion arena. And then at the very back there was a tiny, tiny little kitchen where you could just about make yourself a cup of tea. And Bruce loved this room. And in fact, he went into it, and it was like just an adventure playground of percussion instruments. And it was full of not just all the normal ones like marimbas and vibes and gongs and stuff like that, but he had all these kind of sound sculptures that he'd built or that friends of his had built. And Bruce had a wide circle of friends and acquaintances, to put it mildly. And he had little kind of spies in just about every scrapyard in Tyneside. And if they were in there and somebody was tipping something out of a wagon or putting something into a wagon, and they heard a nice kind of chiming noise as one bit of metal hit another, they'd prick their ears up and think, oh, Bruce might like that. And into the back of a wagon it would go, and it would turn up outside Bruce's house, some big metal coil or spring or something, some unidentifiable thing covered in grease and engine oil. So this would get unloaded and cleaned up a little bit, and Bruce would make something out of it or string it up from the beams, and it would become part of his array of percussion instruments. And I remember, I've never seen a man that was so eager. The living room was upstairs, and I've never seen a man so eager to go and make any visitor a cup of tea. Because, as I've said before, to get to the kitchen, you had to go through this room, and you couldn't walk through it, and he certainly couldn't walk through it without just getting a beater. And it wasn't just a gentle tap, it was kind of walloping something. And it was quite a kind of live room. There wasn't a carpet, and the walls were very bare. So it was very, very echoey, and you'd be going through into the kitchen, and all of a sudden you'd just be almost pushed to the wall by this kind of rush of air as Bruce walloped one of these big gongs. And you'd be just around to turn around and tell him off and say, oh, Bruce, man, will you stop it, And then he'd look round, and he would be there. And it was always patently obvious that he didn't do it to offend or to make you jump or anything like that. He'd be there just with an expression of pure bliss on his face, listening to the reverberations dying away. And he'd turn around and say something like, Kathryn, man, air moving, there's nothing like it, is there? And what could you say? So anyway, this is a tune that I wrote in memory of Bruce. And it's not the tune I intended to write. I wanted to write something really fast and complex with loads of little cross rhythms and things that a percussion player could get their teeth into. But tunes sometimes have a habit of having their own mind about where they want to go and what they want to be. And this tune had its own ideas about what sort of tune I should write for Bruce. So this is it, and it's just called Air Moving.